Appreciate it. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. It's wonderful to have all of you here this evening for the 18th annual Robert P. Maxon Lecture. And this lecture was created from a generous gift from Dorothy Maxon, whose husband, Robert P. Maxon, for whom the lectureship is named, graduated from GW in 1948. So we appreciate the generosity of Dorothy and the ability we have to do this on an annual basis. This lecture series each year features prominent executives and academics who help us think a little bit about sustainability, contemporary global management practices, socially responsible leadership. And we think it's an important contribution to our overall curriculum and approach in the business school, where we really like to think about ethical leadership, social responsibility, and globalization, and how we can help develop and prepare the next generation of global citizen leaders that will help really make a difference in the world, both here and across the country and around the world. These themes are cornerstones of our curriculum, and programs like this really help add flavor to that and help us understand it from a real world perspective how these things are playing out within the corporate setting. So it's my pleasure now to introduce President Steve Knapp, who will then introduce our speaker. President Knapp is the 16th president of George Washington University. For the last 10 years, he's provided tremendous leadership to the university, enhancing the university's partnerships with neighboring institutions and the Washington, D.C. community, expanding the scope of the research across the university and across the faculty, and really leading and transforming the university as a model for urban sustainability in many ways, not just with curriculum, but also with the operations of the university that is a model for other universities. He loves GW, as you will be able to tell, and so please join me in welcoming President Stephen Knapp.
Thanks very much, Dean Livingstone, for that very kind introduction. Before I go any further, ladies and gentlemen, I do have to take a moment to congratulate Dean Livingstone, because just this very day it was announced that she has been elected to become the 15th president of Baylor University. So congratulations. And as you can imagine, already hearing her speak tonight, we greet that news with very mixed feelings, really heartfelt congratulations. We know she'll do a tremendous job as president, but we're certainly going to miss you here as dean of our School of Business. So congratulations once again. I'd like to extend a special welcome to the 18th annual Robert P. Maxon Lecture to Dean Lynn Goldman of the Milken Institute School of Public Health, to the members of the GW School of Business Board of Advisors who are here, and of course our speaker, Derk Hendriksen, whom I'll introduce in a moment. GW is really fortunate to have gifts like this one that established this lecture series that create an unparalleled set of opportunities really for our students, and they do so by bringing thought leaders from industry, government, and nonprofit organizations to our campus, and they do so in a way that gives our students a front row seat in the theater of history. They help us prepare the next generation of citizen leaders who will tackle this nation's and the world's most pressing challenges. And we're looking forward to hearing from tonight's distinguished speaker, who will contribute, I think, very importantly to our understanding of exactly the kinds of values and interests that the dean was describing that are really the focus of the Maxon lectures. Derk Hendriksen is originally from the Netherlands and received his MBA in business economics from the University of Groningen. He has worked at the Coca-Cola company for 19 years and now serves as Vice President of Business Integration in the Office of Sustainability, where he's responsible for the planning and marketing of the company's conduct of its role as a sustainable business. Mr. Hendriksen is also the General Manager of Coca-Cola's EcoCenter project, which strives to provide disadvantaged communities with access to clean drinking water, solar power, and wireless connectivity. The project has grown dramatically since it was announced by Coca-Cola CEO Muhtar Kent at the Clinton Global Initiative Conference in New York City in September 2013. I happen to have had the good fortune of being present at CGI when this exciting announcement occurred. There are now more than 100 EcoCenters in several African countries and in Vietnam. In previous roles at Coca-Cola, Derk Hendriksen helped build the Coca-Cola way of marketing, the company's proprietary approach to building some of the world's strongest brands. He also served in various marketing, general management, and sustainability roles for Coca-Cola in the Netherlands, Belgium, France, and the European Union. Before joining Coca-Cola, he held positions at R.J. Reynolds Tobacco and also at Kimberly-Clark. His lecture this evening is entitled, Business is Social, Coca-Cola's EcoCenters. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Derk Hendriksen.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you, President Knapp, and it's an honor to be here. It's nice to not really see, but I know that there's a couple of familiar faces in the audience today, so thank you for coming. And very nice to see so many new faces here to have a conversation with. So thank you to the organization and to all speakers before me for welcoming me here today. I was going to introduce myself, but President Knapp, you did a wonderful job, so I'm going to keep it very, very short. I do indeed look after a couple of elements in our sustainability space for Coca-Cola, and business integration in my world really is three areas. The first of them is sustainability governance, so making sure that we govern everything that we are committed to as the Coca-Cola company in a proper way when it comes to sustainability. The second is sustainability marketing, so it is making sure that our company and its brands benefit from what I believe is the great work that we're doing in sustainability. And the third one is I oversee, and that's probably what I would call my passion project, our social enterprise called EcoCenter, which is what today's conversation is going to be all about. And I'm particularly excited about that because it really is a way of bringing a lot of the great things that we do as an organization together, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But before I do that, I just wanted to give a little bit of context about what sustainability at the Coca-Cola Company entails and how we've structured it. About 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little longer, when my boss, the Chief Sustainability Officer, was appointed, there was a lot of work in sustainability that the Coca-Cola Company was doing. So the first port of call was to get the strategy right and to focus on what was really important. So we spent a lot of time going through materiality analyses, some of them more sophisticated than others, but that led to a strategic framework that we call our Me, We, World framework, which is the one that you see behind me here. We are a people-centric company. People, consumers, customers, stakeholders, they're critical to the success of our organization. So thinking from what is important to people in general and consumers who purchase our products in particular is of critical importance for us. So it's about the individual as an entity, if you will. It's about communities, the we part, and it is about all of us together sharing the one and only planet that we know exists. So that's where the Me, We, World framework comes from. Within those three pillars, there are a couple of areas that are obviously for a beverage company like ours of critical importance. First of them, under the Me pillar, is personal well-being, everything that has to do with health, well-being, calorie intake, you name it. Obviously, we have an important role to play there to help shape that dialogue and be part of the solutions in that space. So that is of critical importance to our organization. Within the We pillar, there are a few areas that are equally important to us. Obviously, we operate in communities around the world, 200 plus markets where we have a very local business through our bottlers. We're a franchise organization, so we have operations in many markets around the world. So the communities that we operate in are very near and dear to us. So when it comes to youth employment, whether it comes to women empowerment and women employment and creating economic opportunity, that is of critical importance to the viability and the sustainability of our business at the local level. And then in the We part, the We pillar, there are three areas that I don't think would come as a surprise to any of you, which would be water, packaging, and carbon. Obviously, all three of them are important from an environmental perspective. We're a beverage company, so water is critical to our business. We package our products in packaging solutions that have their implications. So what we do with that from an environmental perspective is of equal importance. So all of that goes into a framework against which we have made a number of commitments. I'll give you just a few examples. For instance, we are committed to enabling 5 million women by the year 2020 through activities in our value chain, which is a commitment that we're very, very proud of. We're almost halfway and still have a long way to go, and we're confident that we're gonna make that. And in water, we committed to be water neutral, so to give back to communities and the world the amount of water that we use for the production of our products, and we've achieved that goal 4 years early. So I think it speaks to making commitments or sharing aspirations and being very focused on executing those. So in 2013, as President Knapp just alluded to, we made another commitment, which was to go and start a program that we call EcoCenter. And I want to talk a little bit about EcoCenter in the context of how I see the role of business evolving. Obviously, we've always had what we call our core business, our beverage business that you're all very familiar with, hopefully. And on the other extreme, we had and have the Coca-Cola Foundation, which does a lot of philanthropy, charitable giving. We give away at least 1% of our operating income through the Coca-Cola Foundation. A lot of great work is done there. But it's grant making and what have you. So there's a commercial end to the business, and then there's a charitable end or a foundation end to the business. And I call that our black and white operating model. And it's very interesting to see where, in my mind, the world is going, which is that there's a shade of gray in between, where there's a lot of opportunity for organizations to make a meaningful difference. And we call that, on our end, we call that social enterprise. There's a lot of different kind of types of names for that. Some call it shared value or social business or what have you, and the definitions vary. But the idea of bringing the social piece and the business piece together, not seeing them as mutually exclusive ideas, is something that I care a lot about and that the EcoCenter program plays into. So what we do though in social enterprise, sorry, can we go one slide back? Yeah. What we do with the EcoCenter program is bring a variety of partners together against what we call the golden triangle of partnerships. So we think that there are a lot of challenges that the world is facing that no single sector can solve in and by itself, whether it's government or civil society, NGOs, or private sector players. It's almost impossible to serve some of the main challenges that we have around the world. Billions of people without access to clean water. Billions of people not being connected and not having the information that they need to get on with their lives. Billions of people not having access to basic health care or what have you. So the well-being of communities is in distress because the access is not there. And we believe that by working together, we can help solve those problems. So what we see as an organization is a need to work together and to collaborate with what we call Golden Triangle partners. And the type of leadership that we're developing, we call that tri-sector leadership. So the ability to lead, to lead against shared goals coming from multiple angles in the Golden Triangle. And EcoCenter does that. So what is EcoCenter? EcoCenter is kind of what I would call like a downtown in a box. So think of communities that are out there, often in the middle of nowhere, far in rural parts of the world, Africa, Asia, Latin America, where there is very little access to any of the utilities that I just explained. So what EcoCenter does, it provides off-grid access to water, power, and connectivity. Not all of them in every occasion, but it has the ability to. And it does that without pipes, without cables, without connections. So we can go really, really far. An EcoCenter is powered by solar energy. It has the ability to power water purification units. It is connected, so it connects communities to the internet, and as a result of that, it provides necessary utilities to communities in need. And what I always do is I take the example of if you move house. Most of us have moved house. When you get there, what is the first thing you do? When you move into your new house, you call the water company, the power company, and the cable company. And once you have those three things in place, you can pretty much do anything that you want. Well, it works the same out there. If you have access to clean water, to power, and to connectivity, you can actually get on with life and provide your community with a variety of services. What we do with an EcoCenter is we then work with the community to select women in the communities, primarily women, not in all cases, but in most cases, to run those EcoCenters and provide those three utilities to those communities. But then we work with other partners, private sector partners, NGOs, what have you, to leverage the availability of those utilities to provide services. Simple services like, you know, health screenings or access to health information, to you know, mobile banking, simple stuff like phone charging, access to internet connections, what have you. And we also put up a direct physical supply chain. So we work with private sector partners to make sure that necessary goods go into those EcoCenters as well, and we make sure that there is as a result of that, there's access to utilities, to services, and to products. So it's not rocket science, but it's sustainable, and the whole premise is to do it from a social enterprise perspective. And the way I like to talk about it is, you know, both the social as well as the enterprise aspect are important. So the operator, in most cases, the woman operator who runs the EcoCenter is someone who runs it as a business, who sells those services and products to her community so that the revenues of that can cover the operating expenses and her livelihood. But at the same time, the community gets access to necessary social services. And what we're seeing is that this ecosystem of partners that is coming together, once that first footprint is there, is tapping into its entrepreneurial spirit and makes more possible than the first initial footprint of what happens when there's an EcoCenter. So I have a very small video. It wouldn't be the Coca-Cola company if I wouldn't have had a video. So there's a small video that tells this story a lot better than I have of what we have accomplished over the last 2 years. So when this is the last slide, but when I said, you know, it's about social enterprise, and both the social and the enterprise are important, the phase that we're in now is making sure that we're not only scaling the program, but also that we're measuring what is important. And I said earlier on, we operate in over 200 countries and many more communities around the world. And one way of looking at it from a business perspective and why this is important is, in the long run, a business can only be as healthy as the communities that it is part of. So holistic community well-being is critical to our long-term existence. So the metrics that we're looking at, therefore, are very holistic as well. We look at physical well-being, social well-being, environmental well-being, and economic well-being. And the metrics that we are developing are not perfect yet. It's a lot easier often to measure your P&L and the number of cases of a certain product that you're selling than it is to measure the impact on school attendance of girls, for instance, because they have access to clean water, or the number of kilowatt hours produced by the solar panels that you have on the rooftop of your EcoCenters. But we're making a lot of progress, and we're really looking at our metrics and our ways of measuring through the lens of social and enterprise, so that they're equally weighted in about 50-50. So, are we selling and with our partners? Are we selling products through this? Yes, absolutely. Is this part of the development of our long-term business growth strategy? Definitely. Do we care about the social impact and the well-being in communities that we are approving? Yes, equally much. So, it's been a great journey so far of 2 years. We actually have more than 150 out there now. So this video was a little dated. So we're making good progress, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of years working with partners in the private sector, in government, as well as with NGOs and other like-minded partners to join us in this purpose and lead this all together. So I'll leave it with that, and then hopefully we can have a conversation. Thank you.
Can you sit here? Thank you so much. We appreciate that introduction, and we have to get our Coca-Colas and have a drink right here. So, and I do love Coke Zero, so I'm glad to do
Wonderful.
this. So,
thanks for the plug.
So,
right.
Let's see if I can do it without spilling it all over the place here. When we were talking earlier before we started, we were having a conversation about how you get these kinds of sustainability initiatives sort of begun and then embedded in an organization. I think one of the phrases you used that when you first started some of these, it was like pushing water uphill. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how you begin within a large, old organization to get these kinds of initiatives to have traction, and then how do you get them to be more embedded fully in the sort of life and experience of the organization?
Yeah, it definitely not everybody is on board from the get-go. Mm-hmm. What helped really in our situation is that, as President Knapp just alluded to, our CEO, our current CEO, was very supportive of the program, and to a very large extent, it was his brainchild. Mm-hmm. And the backstory there is interesting because I talked about materiality and what is important to our business, and I think I refer to water. So the reason why I was actually, coming out of the mm-hmm. of the marketing world and into this social enterprise world was because we had an initiative going on with water purification that he was passionate about. Mm-hmm. It was a joint venture, and I was asked to, look after that from a Coca-Cola perspective. But as we went to look more into that water program and started to think about how we could leverage that for communities that are very far out, mm-hmm. Very hard to get access to, we realized that we needed so much more. We needed power, we needed connectivity. So it was almost like, from a practical perspective, the need was there to do it all. And the question then was, if you go into those communities that you rarely get to, why would you just stop at one thing? Why can't you think more holistically, in a more integrated way? And it was a unique opportunity for us to bring a lot of our commitments together in one solution. And I think from a business perspective, that makes it really interesting. So if you have one solution that helps you solve multiple challenges, then the number of people that would be supportive of the initiative increases as well. So if I compare the organizational excitement about something that was very narrowly defined and committed to a certain technology, if you will, and then something that is more holistic, that has more legs, and that helps solve some of the business challenges that we have, I saw the pickup improving over time. But definitely, the CEO standing behind it and giving his personal support was very, very critical in the early years.
And so when you look at the strategy, the corporate strategy of Coca-Cola, to what extent are initiatives like this sort of embedded in that as sort of part of the fabric of the organization now, and how do you promote that within the context of trying to influence the corporate strategy?
Yeah, I think it's an overstatement to say that EcoCenter right now is embedded in the corporate strategy. Right. It's coming out of a pilot phase, and it's getting to a certain stage of maturity where we can now start to think about scaling. It is definitely something that we, as I said, don't want to do alone. So we want to bring partners in. So to some extent it is depending on the interest and the willingness of other partners to do this together with us. And it's great to see that there's so much excitement out there. So that's a phase that we're now into. If it would have been just us, I don't think I would have gotten the traction that we currently have. But because other important stakeholders to us are interested in it, it creates more traction. That isn't to say that other commitments and areas that are in sustainability that are important to our business aren't integrated in the business. Obviously, we do a lot of water and, you know, from wastewater management to water replenishment to empowering women in our value chain and what have you. All of that happens as well. So in that context, EcoCenter is just a very small project, but I think it is big in ambition. And as such, you know, the fact that it ticks multiple boxes when it comes to the sustainability priorities is definitely a, you know, an advantage.
So sometimes you hear a criticism from the public that, you know, the only reason big companies do these kinds of things is for the PR value in them, and that they don't really sort of care about the outcomes, or these initiatives may or may not actually really make a difference in the countries that they're doing it, but it sounds good, and so we're going to do them and make a big story out of it. How does Coca-Cola sort of address that kind of criticism, and how do you approach what you're doing in this area to try to avoid that kind of a reaction to what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think it's about being real and authentic, and it all comes down to character. And I think that our organization has shown a lot of character over the last 130 years. You know, this is not the first thing we do in sustainability. I think over the decades and over the centuries, frankly, we've demonstrated that character of caring about the communities that we operate in and the planet that we occupy. That doesn't mean that all the solutions are always easy. So I'm not sitting here saying that we have all the answers and that's a perfect world out there. There's lots of challenges, and we're working through those every day. And we want to be part of the solutions where problems exist that are relevant to our business. But you know, a genuine care for the communities and not walking away from it when you know, disaster strikes, if you will, is of critical importance. So to me, balancing the long term with the short term kind of priorities is important for an organization that's been around for 130 years. It'd be interesting to think about what the next 130 years are going to look like, right? Because we've seen plenty of organizations who have become redundant, whose names we don't see in the streets any longer because they've missed the boat. So I do believe that you know, as the world becomes faster, more transparent, more integrated, as the barriers between those sectors that I referred to, society, civil society, government, and private sector, start to diminish, as the world is facing problems that are going to become increasingly complex to solve, that all of that endurance, that ongoing character, and frankly the collaboration, and not looking at everything as a competition, but more as a long-term problem solution orientation, I think will demonstrate that you know, character goes a long way.
So you kind of referenced this in those remarks, but you talked earlier about tri-sector leadership.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about how you define that and how that's different than what you might typically see in sort of single sector leadership.
Yeah.
So what's important about that to make these kinds of initiatives work effectively?
I'd say, in one word, it's purpose, or shared purpose. So understanding that there are challenges out there that are important to address, and coming out of that a sense of purpose. So our purpose is to improve the holistic well-being of communities. We're not the only ones who care about that. There's plenty of other organizations who care about that. There's NGOs like World Vision who we work with. There are obviously governments care about that. Typically it's part of their mandate. That doesn't mean that they always have the solutions, and increasingly governments are interested in working with businesses because we have the sense of urgency and in many cases some of the capabilities that they lack. And they have theirs that we don't have, right? So bringing all of those together, but making sure that there's a shared sense of purpose from the get-go is really critical. And why am I saying that? It's because that's the thing you fall back on when problems happen, right? And all sectors and organizations have different ways of working, of managing projects, and it gets really granular. So figuring out, you know, especially in the early days, how organizations and sectors work, where you can find common ground, how you're actually going to work together to make these complex projects a reality. Because here, you know, you're in the middle of nowhere. It's not like I have experience in building programs in Rwanda, but
Right.
but others do, particularly the local government and communities and stakeholders. So that sense of collective is really critical.
So I've got another question for you, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. And so we've got folks with microphones, and once we go to the audience for questions, raise your hand, let them bring you a microphone because we're videoing this, so we want to be sure we get your question on the video that we're doing. But let me ask you this question. This week we're actually having our new venture competition at the university, so it's very exciting. We have, I think, 12 or 13 teams that are in the finals, which we're doing Thursday night. We have a number of our teams that are focusing on kind of sustainable types of projects. And we certainly have a lot of students on the campus that care a lot about entrepreneurship and thinking about how to do some type of an entrepreneurial venture that might have a socially responsible or sustainable component. So given that you sort of spend your life in this world thinking about these kinds of things, are there areas where you think there's more opportunity than others for new businesses to emerge that could be really successful and make a difference in this space?
Kind of catch me off guard
It's
a
a
little
tough
bit with that
question. I
one.
know. You can think about it a little bit.
No, I think, you know, off the cuff, I would say the sharing economy is a really interesting trend, and I think right now most of what's happening in terms of, you know, the scaled businesses, they happen in the developed world, right? The Ubers and the Airbnbs and the what have you. But I think that those technologies, as they mature, are very promising to solve social challenges in less developed parts of the world as well. And I know that there's a lot going on already. It's not that we're starting from scratch, but I do think that leveraging those type of technologies, for instance, to educate people or to inform them or to include them in, you know, government processes or what have you.
Right.
I think that that's a really interesting angle to explore, where actually you don't necessarily have to have your feet on the ground on an everyday basis in the place where it happens. You can conceptually and practically develop that at a distance. And what I have seen, though, and gonna go a little sideways here, is what I have seen is that particularly, you know, what we call the millennial and the Gen Z generations are very, very eager to be involved in this, in programs like this. So we get a lot of that, and it's just exciting to, in general, think about how we can involve like-minded people who live in different parts of the world. In programs like this that everybody cares about, whether they're close to home or far away from home. So, you know, if there's anything coming out of these initiatives, I'd love to know about it.
That'd be great. We'd be happy to share with you some of the interesting business ideas that come out on Thursday. So who do we have a question from in the audience? Okay, there's one. Do we have one back here? It's a little hard. There we go. Okay, back here first.
Thank you so much.
Stand up, please, and tell us your name.
My name is Gaston de los Reyes. I'm a professor in the business school, and I appreciate learning about your project. It's an exciting model that you have. You said that the company's purpose is to enhance the well-being, the holistic well-being of communities. And so I'm a parent. I think about enhancing the holistic well-being of my children, and it's pretty straightforward to me that their well-being is enhanced much more by clean water than by soda water, whether it's sugar or chemical soda water. And from the standpoint of their wealth, they're much better off developing a taste for clean water than they are developing a taste that requires them to spend more money for soda water. And so with your goal of enhancing communities around the world, everything makes sense except, in a way, the Coca-Cola in the EcoCenter. And so my question is, how do you make sense of that tension? And can you imagine Coca-Cola's commitment to projects like EcoCenter revolutionizing the company so that it lets go of the product stream that has been its legacy?
Yes, first of all, thank you for the question. It's not the first time we hear about questions like this. So thank you. What's of critical importance to realize is that we are obviously aware of challenges that society faces, and we want to be part of those solutions. So we have a lot of work going on in terms of broadening our portfolio. I'm sitting here drinking. It's hidden behind here, but we have everything from water to juices, to soda drinks. Is our legacy portfolio. We believe that. It's obviously to the individual to decide what the dietary preferences are, and we will provide the solutions, whether it is from, clean water to juices and everything in between, small and large. So there's a lot of innovation going on right now when it comes to the recipes of our products, reformulation of products, but also packaging sizes, making sure that you have a choice between small and large and everything in between. So we actually don't think that it is up to us to make those decisions for you. I think, you refer to it, Professor, you're a professor, but also a dad, right? Which comes with its responsibilities. I'm a dad too, and I'm having those same conversations with my children. Your conversation might be a little different from mine, but we're having those conversations, and we have those responsibilities. So the choices that we make as parents and the way we educate our children are different for all of us. What we aspire to do is provide you within the context of the beverage of beverages with the portfolio of solutions that you can use in that dialogue, and in creating those preferences. So absolutely, we respect your role as a parent, and we want to make sure that we provide you at least to the limits of our abilities with the tools that you have to. Or with the products and the solutions that you have to provide to your children.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Dominic Segura. I'm a sophomore in the business school right now. Just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the students here for coming and sharing your time with us. My question's specifically about the links between alternative products and the way they're marketed. So I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I do a lot more research into what I put in my body than probably the average consumer does. And so instead of choosing a regular Coke, I would normally choose a diet just because of the sugar impact. Mm-hmm. However, the aspartame in a lot of the Diet Coke products is also, essentially toxic. So I was just wondering if you can kind of comment on the links you saw while you worked in the tobacco industry to kind of what you're working on now in the soda industry, and kind of compare and contrast them if you could.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go there. I can comment though on aspartame as an ingredient. It's a very well researched ingredient, and safety is the first and foremost important mission of when it comes to our products. So we would, from our perspective, not put anything in our products that's not safe. And from our knowledge, aspartame is safe. That does not mean that you might have a different opinion about that, which I totally respect. And in that case, as I said earlier on, there are obviously other brands and products that hopefully would fulfill your needs. So that would be my answer to that. But to draw a direct comparison, I don't think that is. I don't think there is a comparison.
Okay, back here.
Hello, I'm Tony. I'm a junior in the business school. I know these projects are long-term. Do you rush the speed of developing these projects? Because I feel as though the more companies that tag along with with similar intentions, the less authenticity consumers will think Coca-Cola has, and they might not think it's from the heart. So are you nervous about competitors building more competition to this project specifically?
That's a really good question. I don't think that competition is necessarily, in this case, I don't necessarily look at it as competition, let's put it that way. I think what is interesting for us is to work together to help solve those challenges. And there are lots of companies, also in the private sector, that would love to, that are interested in working with us on this. And that's the type of leadership that we're trying to provide. So, as an example, we're working with SC Johnson and some of their products with regards to malaria and what have you, prevention thereof. And obviously teaming up and doing that together is a great way of providing more solutions and doing it in a cost-efficient way. And that goes back to the point about purpose. Obviously there are direct competitors and less direct competitors, so it depends a little bit on the situation. But I do think that, there's a famous African saying, which is, you can go far alone. You can go fast alone or far together. And since we have a lot of our operations in Africa, I always refer to that one because it is true. It's not easy. But if you think about it and start from a sense of purpose and bring the collective forward rather than the individual party, in my experience, that tends to lead to more sustainable results and bigger impact, bigger social impact.
Frank.
Frank Sesno, the School of Media and Public Affairs and the Planet Forward project here at the university. We talk a lot about sustainability, and we look a lot at 2050. 9.7 billion people, twice as much energy needed and 40% more water. So as a water company, whether it's soda water or Dasani water, what new initiatives are you undertaking, and how are you working through your public-private partnerships to address the world's water needs and crises?
Well, there's a lot going on. First of all, it happens at the plant level. So our production plant, in terms of water efficiency, wastewater treatment, etc. We have clear targets and progress in those areas. But we're also working with other organizations to do source water protection and environmental programs when it comes to river protection and what have you. So as I said earlier on, our goal was to become water neutral by 2020. We've made a lot of progress there. And achieved that goal earlier, but it doesn't mean that we rest on our laurels and we think that the work is done. Water scarcity is a challenge that everyone has to face, including us. So making sure that we make responsible use of that is of critical importance, both within the four walls of our operations, as well as in a broader societal approach to it and the solution orientation we have there.
Good. Yes, right here.
Hello, my name is Shoshana Cohen. I'm a senior in the GW School of Business. My question is, obviously for EcoCenters, one of the goals has to be to further the Coke brand name and eventually sell, products in your family line. So how do you keep the balance between being a genuine, caring kind of EcoCenter that's for bettering the community while still, having your brand name intact and, furthering the goals of the brand and making sales?
Well, the primary goal for EcoCenter is to help improve the well-being, or the social goal of EcoCenter is to help improve the well-being of the community. So it is important to make sure that the activities there are balanced and relevant to the communities themselves. So working with the communities to identify what their needs are, whether it is in water or in social infrastructure or education or what have you, making sure that collaboration happens is priority number one. In terms of making our own products available, that's not different from anywhere else. But obviously, with bringing water to communities that currently don't have that. That gives an additional layer of making product available and accessible, because it's not just the availability, but also the accessibility and affordability of it that is critical. So that plays an important role. And then the breadth of the portfolio that I referred earlier, it goes all the way from water to juices and everything in between. So just making sure that there is proper choice there. Is an important aspect of the availability piece of it.
I think we have time for one more question from the audience, so here we go. Yeah, right back there.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I actually used to work in market research. Coca-Cola was one of my clients, and I now work in international development on monitoring and evaluation of our projects. I work for USAID. And you touched on this a little bit, but one of the things that I think is really striking is the fact that when you're measuring success for a business, you're looking at revenue and you can project out based on those types of models. But when you're looking at success for a social enterprise, it's really different. And I'm wondering what kinds of metrics you're looking at and how much weight you ascribe to kind of short-term gains that might look good for PR value versus the investments that are only really going to bear fruit over time, like educating a child.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I have to be, I want to be fully transparent with you that we don't have all the answers in that space. So we're looking at output metrics and impact metrics, and the output metrics are much easier to measure, right? I mean, 500,000 kilowatt hours of renewable energy or 50 million liters of water. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. So we know we have that baseline. And then we know that there, as a result of that, there are impact metrics which take a lot longer. The ones that are a little more easy to measure is, for instance, school attendance. You know, because there are records out there. You can talk to the communities. You can actively engage with them. But then there's others like, for instance, the impact of education. You mentioned that, or frankly, diseases. You know, the impact of having access to clean water to waterborne diseases. How do you measure that? That probably sits somewhere in the middle between school attendance and the effect of long-term effect of education. So that is not necessarily the space that we're particularly strong in as an organization, which is why we aspire to work with organizations like USAID or others who have the capability in doing that. I think we've made good progress over the last 2 to 3 years. But as I said, it's a journey, and we can definitely improve in that space. But the investment to measure it must be made, because otherwise you're not going to get the answers. Having said that, I think that technology will increasingly play an important role. And one of the things, very practically speaking, these EcoCenters are connected to the internet, right? So with certain devices, we will be able to measure better than we used to be. It won't be perfect, but we gotta make sure that we keep improving. But if there's any suggestions that are out there that can help us do a better job, absolutely, we're ready to work with that.
Let me ask a concluding question
Sure.
as we wrap up the evening. We talked a little bit about students that might be interested in entrepreneurship, but we also have a lot of students that would love to work in a large corporation like a Coca-Cola, but also have great interest in the sustainability activities of that type of organization. What advice might you give our students in the audience for how they can sort of best prepare themselves for that type of a career while they're in college that would position them well for opportunities when they get out and start a job in a company like Coca-Cola?
Yeah. Well, I can share my own experience.
Sure, that'd be great.
I kind of grew up with sustainability, environmental awareness, all of that was a big part of my childhood. So I feel that it's like, I grew up in the Netherlands, as was mentioned earlier on, and it's a hotbed for that type of thinking, if you will. So I felt it was in me, but in the early years of my career, it wasn't necessarily part of my consideration set until I started to realize, about the very strong interlinkage between sustainability in the broadest sense of the word and running a sustainable business.
Sure.
And I think just going in with that mindset is an important one, because in the end, they're not mutually exclusive or different. They need to be part of the same conversation, or otherwise the word sustainability loses its meaning.
Sure.
Therefore, I don't think it really matters if you come into an organization through a finance or a marketing or a sustainability angle. Ultimately, it's all coming together into the business agenda and how do you run a sustainable business. So I think if you're interested in that, in this area, it's more a mindset of seeing the bigger picture and applying your problem-solving abilities to the bigger picture, rather than thinking very siloed, maybe in the discipline that you grew up with or that you did your dissertation in, or what have you, because I think it's a very holistic discipline by nature.
Very good. We appreciate that.
Thank
so
you.
let's thank Mr. Hendriksen for his time today.
Thank you.
We have a special presentation. I'll let you do this.
Oh, thank
Steve.
you. Wow.
Appreciate you
Thank you.
joining us for the
This is great.
Maxon
Put
Lecture and being a
Thank
part of
you.
this today.
All right, yeah, sure.
Let's thank Derk again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Thank you.
it. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.